Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Excited to get started. I'm Monica. I'm the innovation lead for CPG Camp. And I wanted to just give you a little bit of context of who I am before we dive into all the great content. So I have spent the last 17 years in brand management, and I started my career at Johnson& and Johnson, where I worked on marketing a OTC brand called Pepsid. Then I spent over 8 years in beauty, working for Avon and a lot of personal care brands at Unilever. And then shifted over to gain new category experience, working on the beverages side, managing brands like Lipton and Tazo. And then for the last 4 years, I have been working as a innovation consultant, and I've worked with a variety of brands from Tylenol to vitamin startups to pharma and medical device. So, why am I doing this? I love talking about innovation. I love mentoring. It's my way of giving back. I won't be able to share all of my key tips, but I thought I'd share some of the ones that really help get you started when you have an inkling of an idea or you're looking to solve for a problem. So let's go ahead and get started. First, if some of you may or may not know that what CPG Camp is. So just to give you some background, it was built by industry leaders for industry leaders, and it's grounded in classical brand management, but designed for today's fast pace. You can see the curriculum is influenced by industry leaders from an array of companies. We've trained over 5,000 people, 250 organizations, and we have a great mix of content, whether it's live content, in person, workshops customized to your company's needs or your brand's needs, to online videos and exercises that you can do at your own pace. So what are we hearing when we talk to marketing teams? There's three main themes that we hear when it comes to innovation and sparking new ideas. One is, everyone has ideas, but we struggle to connect them with real consumer tensions. We're guessing, but we're not really grounding them in a true unmet need. Second, we jump to solutions too fast. We don't spend enough time sitting with the problem or understanding the consumer mindset. There's pressure to be disruptive. Senior leadership will often tell us you need to find something that's disruptive, but we don't know. Is the idea just something that's trendy at the moment, or is it something that's going to have staying power and that can be on shelves or online for years to come? So we hear you on all of this, and I think some of the tools that we'll share today will help address some of these concerns. So what's the plan for today? We're going to go through, I'm going to speak for about 15, 20 minutes. I want to leave time for questions if there are any. And we're going to cover these key areas. I'm going to walk you through the inspiration quadrant, three most common ideation traps that teams fall into and how to avoid them, five keys to a problem worth solving. Then we're going to get to know the product ideation template, which is a really great one-page template that your team should continue to refer back to as you continue to develop a product. And then, we'll put this tool into practice with a case example, and we'll do some testing with this idea with AI. All right. So this is the inspiration quadrant, and there's four obviously parts to this. And I think if when a team is just starting out and you want to start brainstorming, if you can find a way to cover at least three of these four areas, I think you're at a really good starting point. So first being trend tracks, and the key here is not just going into cities. You want to go into all, cities, suburbs, rural areas. You can get inspiration from anywhere. You want to go into adjacent categories or categories that you're really inspired by. Second is competitive benchmarking. This does not need to be a 2 or 3 week long analysis. You can divide and conquer and cover everyone can just be assigned to a different area. You come back in 2 or 3 days and you share what you found. Focus groups, in-depth interviews. The sooner you can get in front of a consumer and talk to them, the better. And then finally, there's other research that can be done, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, to guide decision making. And and just some pro tips here for where to get inspiration. You can test your ideas rather quickly. There's a great service called Zappy where you can ask the 5 questions under 2K and you get the results in 24 hours. So if you haven't looked into Zappy yet, I highly recommend it. Second, I talked about diversifying with trends. Whether you're diversifying where you go when it comes to trend tracks, you want to look for all types of inspiration, and um, it's also a great way to just get away from your desk, get your teams on the ground, and away from technology, and just explore and see what's going on at retail or where consumers are, where your target consumer is even spending their day. Okay, so next we're going to get into the 3 most common ideation traps. So, so first, jumping to solutions too fast. Make sure you're ideating from a true consumer insight. And the tool we're going to give you, the PIT tool, is a great way to continually go back and refine and make sure that you're landing on a true insight. Ask yourself, are we solving the right problem? When it comes to a certain category, there's a lot of problems to be solved, but really look to prioritize which problem is worth solving, which one provides the highest incremental value. Groupthink and the loudest voice wins. So you want to start with silent. I always love to start my teams with silent brainstorming. Have everyone brainstorm on their own and then bring the ideas together. You can have them share their ideas live. You could have have the stickies up on a board, and people can go and put stars next to the ideas that they rank the best. You want to avoid having the loudest voice win. And you also want to make sure there's always people on the team that wants to be the challenger. Take turns being the challenger. It's a really great way to kind of stretch your teams to think differently and play different roles. And third, stop at the obvious ideas. So I think oftentimes, and it could be because, sometimes teams do this every year and there may be some naysayers in the group that say, well, we've done this before, or this didn't work 3 years ago when we tried it. Push for a lot of ideas before making any judgments and avoid kind of thinking through the logical steps of, well, legal and regulatory will never let this fly. Make first start with, is it really grounded in a true insight? Is this meeting an unmet need? Then you can work to convince legal and regulatory on the language that you can use to position this product. All right, moving on. So I'm going to be walking through some examples, and I'm going to be using the pet care category as an example. And the target is busy dog owners. Okay, so first off, when you're trying to think about what is the problem that's worth solving, there's 5 areas that this is the lens through which you can pressure test the problem. So the first lens is when you're talking to consumers, or you're even maybe not necessarily talking to consumers, but you're online observing behaviors through Facebook groups, or you're looking at sentiment online, you want to look for emotional words. I feel guilty or overwhelmed, worried. Ask open-ended questions. What's the hardest part about owning a dog? And the more you can talk to real people and not profiles, the better. And, whether it's you or your team, you want to seek high value problem signals. So is this something that is happening frequently? Is it something that causes a lot of emotion? Is it underserved? So are there current solutions out there, but the ones that are out there are lacking? Third, whenever you're putting your concepts together, um, you want to use the consumer's voice. So here's an example. Rather than say, urban pet owners experience extended separation from their animals, put it in the consumer's voice. I feel awful every morning when I leave my dog alone for 10 hours. So as you're putting this problem together and you're speaking in the consumer's voice, it's easier for your teams to then brainstorm because they can already start imagining who this consumer is. Maybe it's somebody they know, maybe it's themselves. And then, sharpen it. So avoid being vague. We are looking to target pet owners who want more connection with their pets. You want to be more specific. Busy dog owners feel guilty and anxious about leaving their pets home alone all day without stimulation or care. And finally, you want to continue to ask the so what. And this is throughout, from ideation all the way through to product development. So what? They leave their dog alone. Okay, so what? They feel guilty and distracted. They feel like they're failing their pet and they can't be a good dog parent. Well, that's where you really get into, okay, well, how can we make them feel like less of a failure and feel really good about being a dog parent? All right, so next, I want to show you the simple tool I've come up with. Worked at a lot of companies. There's a lot of frameworks out there on how to organize your thoughts from brainstorming. And this one is simple, it's doable, it's small so that you have to really be concise with your language and refine your language. So it, it starts with the consumer problem, the solutions that are out there, what's working, what's not working, and then really drilling into like, well, what's the tension point here? And that fifth bucket is where your team is gonna spend a lot of where you should spend a lot of time with your team on really unlocking, is this a true consumer tension? And then you start the brainstorming. So once you've had this refined, and I would spend a good amount of time on the left side of the slide before you move into the right, then everyone has a target on where to brainstorm, and your ideas are more catered to the tension at hand. So let's play this out. So the consumer problem. Busy dog owners feel guilty and anxious about leaving their pets home alone all day without stimulation or care. Current solutions, dog walking services, doggy daycares, puzzle toys or cameras. What's working? Well, there are services out there with real-time updates. There's tools that you can use to engage the dog and the owner when they get home from work. What's not working? Some are expensive. Some of these services, whether it's having a dog walker come in throughout the day, it can be costly. And the passive toys that you leave for your dog during the day, they don't really ease the guilt. So where's the tension here? I want to be a good dog parent. I'm stuck at work. I feel like I'm failing my pet. So just an example, we brainstormed a couple ideas. And this is just so that you can see how you can take some of these ideas, test it against a persona via AI, and then refine the idea. And so the two ideas that we came up with were subscription-based dog enrichment boxes. So curated toys, treats, and scent games tailored to your dog's breed, age, and anxiety levels. A smart pet companion app. So this is a two-way interactive app that lets the owner talk to, reward, and monitor their dogs anywhere. All right. So just to let you know, I forgot to preface this in the beginning. I'm going to be sharing all these slides. You don't need to take notes. I'll be sharing all of this. You can use this template, and I'll share it, after the presentation. All right, so next, we have an idea. Let's test our idea with an AI persona. And this is a persona I came up with using some prompts via ChatGPT. And, this is not something that just, you do one time and, this is iterative. You have to go in, you have to think about, you have to give the right prompts to ChatGPT to refine who this person is. But for all intents and purposes, this is the one that we're going with. And I think this fits, our case study in terms of who our brand targets. So who is our AI persona? Emily Chen, she's 34. She's a marketing manager at a tech startup, lives in Brooklyn, has a 3-year-old golden retriever named Milo, lives with her partner, makes about 95K a year, and her lifestyle is active, health conscious, socially engaged. So how can you use this persona in brainstorming, right? So this is like a really quick snapshot of who this consumer is. You could take this even further to think about, well, how does she spend her day? What media does she consume? Uh, what values is she driven by? But this is just like a quick snapshot. You can refine this, and ChatGPT does a good job of actually just putting your thoughts into a concise format. And then as your team is brainstorming, you have this AI persona, uh, as a reference point to be like, would this be something that Emily would be interested in? All right, so now what? We're going to test our ideas against an AI persona. And what's great is you can use AI to just go beyond just who your audience is and refining who am I supposed to target into getting into how they think, how they feel, why they choose um, the options that are out there right now, and then what could compel them to choose yours. And so we already, the key tip here is like you want to make sure you have a clear persona. The more you can input into who this person is, the better outcome you'll get from an AI perspective. You want to make sure that you share your product idea clearly. You don't just write, for example, a subscription box for pet owners. You want to really bring as much as you can to life in terms of what the idea is. Third, when you are working with an AI model, you are going to ask ChatGPT to respond as the persona. And then you want to dig deeper. And I'll share an example that I did in advance. But you want to um, dig deeper into, ChatGPT is going to say, yeah, this sounds like a great product. I think Emily would really like it. Then you start to dig into the why and what features does she wish that could be added, what packaging or messaging would speak to her, give me some examples, refine this messaging because it's not really in my brand tone. Here's my brand tone, now rewrite it into my brand, rewrite this messaging with my brand tone in mind. And you can ask questions like, would she see this as worth the money? This is her annual income. This is where she spends any of her disposable income. And so as you kind of fill in who this persona is, the better output you'll get. And I think I already went through a lot of the pro tips, but you can actually also simulate through AI consumer interviews. You can simulate focus groups. So I would say you can take this as really great inspiration. I wouldn't necessarily say now, this is a done deal and you're ready to launch the product. It's really great to give inspiration, to help refine messaging, explore ideas. But I would still recommend testing your ideas with real consumers. All right, I'm gonna just flip gears right now to show you an example. So I asked ChatGPT to help create the persona so you can see what this is what I reviewed with you already. Emily, the caring urban dog mom. And you'll see that this goes into what are her mindset and motivations? What are her pain points? What is she looking for? What are the brands that she's currently buying? Here's a quote from her. So this is all really good content when you're kicking off a brainstorm with teams. And then ChatGPT asked, do you want me to format this into a pitch deck, a website use, strategy document? And I said, no, I have an idea. I want to run this idea by Emily. These are, this is a subscription box which has curated toys, treats, scented games based on your dog's breed. Every month she'd get a different assortment of seasonally relevant toys and treats. ChatGPT said, this is perfectly aligned with Emily. More often than not, you're going to get a very positive response. So then ChatGPT gives me reasons why this could resonate. And then here's some ways that you could pitch this idea. What would she be willing to pay for it? And so I asked, well, what's going to keep her from buying it? And, here are the top barriers for Emily. So these are things that you can keep in the back of your mind, especially when you're talking to consumers to drill on when you're talking to real consumers, what is keeping them from buying it? How can we overcome that as we design the product? And then, there's some bonus considerations like here's how are we going to compel this person to buy? Let's give them a free trial. Let's give them a discount just to get your mind thinking on how you can drive trial. And then then I ask, well, what messaging would resonate with her? There's lots of different. So as you start to really refine your idea, uh, you want to also make sure that you have a service that is actually keeping track of how you've evolved from the persona to the product, right? Because over time, certain models are not actually holding all of your data. You also want to be very mindful of which service you're using because once you start putting data in, uploading data, it's open. All right, so that kind of shares an example and it kind of ends with, I mean, this could go on for forever, but I finished it with like, here's some sample headline options that ChatGPT shared. Cool. So just to go back and finish up because we're almost at time. I just wanted to, I hope all of that was really helpful. Like I said, I'm going to share all of the slides. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you want to continue the conversation one-on-one. Like I mentioned, CPG Camp has online boot camps. We do live sessions with teams. We consult. We have an array of services. I'm the innovation lead, and we just came out with a really great new innovation course. So would love to chat further. Please follow us on LinkedIn if you'd love to learn about more webinars. I do have a survey. Please, if you have a chance, it's a very brief survey. Would love to hear what you thought of this. Was this helpful? What could we do better? And if you would love to connect further, you can leave your information there. We do have a couple of minutes, so just want to check in if there are any questions. Feel free to send me a message. I don't see any questions right now. So I think we will conclude the call. Well, thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure, and I hope to hear from you soon.